Okay, guys, so stick with me here. I know you're probably mad at me for making you do work. I know it's almost finals. These are the two easiest topics. I skipped out on teaching you a lot of things, and I'm sorry, but these are the two topics I think you can get, and they are on the final exam. They would be on any final exam, and you're gonna see them again next year. So I already gave you notes on this thing called the zero product property. So we're just talking here on this equation about solving. That's a quadratic. 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 Do you know? Hopefully you know at this point. So there are ones at the bottom that are not in factored form. So I will remind you that this is solving from factored form specifically. So factored form is when you have two things multiplying by each other. They're all set equal to 0 on purpose. You can't solve an equation unless it's equal to 0, so that's very important. So if something times something equals 0, we're going to use the fact that hopefully you understood from the last video that this could be 0 or this could be 0. Like if you plug something in, that's going to be a number and that's going to be a number. And so what number would we plug in to make n minus 5 show up as a 0? What number would we have to plug in for n to make this a number? Because there's two possible options. So your method is going to be this could be equal to 0 or this could be equal to 0. I know some of you can do this in your head, but if you aren't sure, set this equal to 0 and then add 5 to both sides. This is how you would show your work, and then n equals 5. Okay, so this one, minus 3, n could be negative 3. If you plug in negative 3, you're going to get negative 8 times 0, which would have to be 0. If you plug in 5, you're going to get 0 times 8, which would have to be 0. So either one of these works. They are both zeros. In fact, if you graph this, these will be the intercepts on the parabola. This parabola is upward facing. It goes through negative 3 and positive 5. Zeros. You don't need to do any of this, of course. But the reason I'm making sure you see this is that down here they get more complex. So 3x minus 8, you can't just say if that's 5, that's 5. If that's plus 3, that's minus 3. I mean, you could. If that's plus 3, it's minus 3. And that's plus 8, it's negative 8. True. But for this one, it's not. So just remember that since this is called the zero product property, you're setting everything equal to 0. So for this one, you'll say 3x minus 8 could be 0. And this is your cue that it is not a whole number because you have to do 2 steps. So when you add 8 to both sides, you get 3x equals 8. And of course, there is no whole number that makes this true. That's the point. So when you divide by 3 on both sides, your answer is a fraction. So 8/3 is fine if you just circle 8/3. Or if you wanted to put this into a calculator or do the decimal, this is 2.6 repeating. Boom. And then this one is just positive 3. So sometimes they're the R values for the root. Sometimes they are not the R values because the R values have to be whole numbers when X is by itself. Okay, so this is something you should do today. Another one I anticipate you getting caught up is number 4. Remember that number 4 could have 2 parentheses, but it doesn't because this R value is 0. So you do the same thing. You set this is still a factor and this is a factor. Set this factor equal to 0. Set this factor equal to 0. If you just follow this process, this equals 0, this equals 0, you go, oh, that's it, that's the answer. You don't have any math to do. And then this one turns into a negative 7 because negative 7 plus 7 is 0. Great. So do all of these. The ones at the bottom have to be factored. So pause the video, do those if you need to. Bing, 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 bing. I'm doing a dumb waiting hold. So this is not in factored form. So everything underneath here is, this one you actually don't have a factored form quadratic. This is just a linear equation with you solving for x, so this is easy. These ones you cannot solve with zero product property. It has to be in factored form. So for the ones below here, we have to actually factor it. And so I'm not going to teach you a whole unit on factored form or test you on it, but we did talk about this before. This is the fact that up here, before we actually multiplied these out. So you could multiply this out and use a box, like the box method if you wanted to, and you would turn it into standard form. But we usually don't do that for zero product property because we like it to stay factored. So instead of multiplying this all out, down here, it's already been multiplied out. So as a reminder, in order to put this into factored form, you need to figure out what goes here and what goes here to multiply to get this. So you are doing this on your own. Hey, student. Hey, my love that I miss so dearly, who is watching this video, and you know who you are. It's you. It's you. Wow, I hope you didn't forget who I am. Please remember that I'm the best teacher in the world, and I'm so cool and fun, and I play lots of music, and you love my class. I'm sorry that if you're annoyed with me for giving you work. This has to be an x, and this has to be an x. So when we do these, typically it's just x and x, because x times x is x squared. If you're doing box method, that goes there. And you ask yourself, what are the other numbers that go here to make this? So here's x squared. This has to multiply to be 4. So your two numbers, 4 is 2 times 2. So if that's a 2 and that's a 2, it works. And then you say, wait a minute, but I need to make it negative 4x. So if that's negative and that's negative, I know this is not easy. If you're picking up what I'm putting down, and if you're checking your work, you know how I got this. If not, feel free to skip these. Like truly feel free to skip these. I'm skipping these. There's also a lesson in your book you can do. Down here, same thing. You say what two things have to multiply to be z squared. And then of course you solve it. But if you down here, you say what two things would multiply to be this? Well, this has to be a z times a z. So it makes z squared. And then what times what is 15? Well, I know that 5 times 3 is 15, but if I did 5 and 3, those would add to make an 8 in the box if you multiplied everything out with double distributing. And we don't have an 8, we have a 2, and this has to be negative. So I know that if I have a negative 3 and a positive 5, if you check your work and multiply this out, z times negative 3 and z times 5, I do cross my z's. I'm being a fake and phony by not doing it here. Then you would get negative 3z and 5z and negative 15. And we go, oh, shoot. All of this, when we combine like terms, this is that. And we go, yay, I did it. This is that. So now after you've turned it into factored form, you can use zero product property. So the ones down here, you have to do extra work. That's what a Math 2 student is expected to do. That's like the learning intention for you guys. But honestly, if you just do this, you're going to get questions right on the final that you'll be asked about. So just set this equal to 0, set this equal to 0, and what values make it 0. Okay, try this on your own.